your
Might as
wife
well.
almost becomes like a Formula One race car, and you are the crew chief. Like you gotta fix the tires, you gotta make sure the suspension and the brakes are working, you gotta do the massages, you gotta do the foot rubs. Like you have to do everything, and then and not that you're even doing a scintilla of the real work, but you
Right.
just kind of have to be responsible for that, and you have to change your mindset. And I think the later in life you are, it can be very difficult. Like the biggest thing for me is just realizing, like I've had this, like Nas talks about second childhood on a Stillmatic, and I
Hmm.
definitely had like a second childhood where, I got into my professional career. I was making very good money. I had disposable income. I can spend that on myself. Like, I work for myself. If like on a Wednesday afternoon, I've decided like, oh, I'm done for today. Like I can push this to, Thursday,
Yeah.
Friday. I'll pick this up on Sunday. I'm gonna go out, get trashed, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go shopping,
Just do
or
whatever. Hit the
just do
movies.
whatever, you know what I mean? Or
Midday
like even
movie. Yeah.
right, yeah, like Wednesday at 3 o'clock, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go and see Inception at the Arc
Yeah.
Light.
Three
That's
hours gone.
that's gone. Like you cannot do that, like
No.
you can't, like even now, like we're in the third trimester, we're at 36 weeks. And now after, like so much time of me not having to be answerable, or like fine, I'll just have 4 beers in the middle of the afternoon, and if I need to go somewhere I'll just Uber. I can't do that because my wife can call me or text me at any moment and say I've gone into labor. And basically this is life from now on. Like you have to be cognizant
Right.
and that you are bringing a human being into this world, and they're taught your responsibility. But again, I think the thing that I wouldn't say struggling with, but the thing that I am working on right now is having to break my mindset that my life is my own, because it has been for so long. And
That is
so
a big change for this pod being 40 Black and Dad. It's like, yeah, we had this such extended period of being single or whatever that our parents didn't have. If your parents had you in their 20s or even early 30s, it's different. When you're 40, it's like, oh, I thought this was what my life was going to be like. Now we're having a kid. And it's like, I have no idea what my life's going to be like now, but I know I have to be accountable and accessible 24/7 from now on.
I think that for me is what I have to work on most consciously about. Like I think it's easy to take the online classes. I think it's easy to, paint the nursery, build the
Right.
crib, do all that stuff that, people are outwardly applauding you for and your wife is grateful for. Like you can do tasks and you can achieve them. But I think that the biggest thing, and where some anxiety has come from, is just realizing that, when you're married or you're in a partnership, yeah, you do love the other person, but the other person is still I mean, if you're in a healthy relationship, they are a self-determined,
Right.
self-contained human
Independent
being who can operate on their
person.
own.
Yeah.
Right. You come together and you build and you get better. But at the end of the day, like, my wife has gone away for a week with the girls to, Cabo and whatnot, and
Right.
you
You
have
can
your
do,
time.
yeah.
And I think particularly, on this podcast, the truth is in my profession, working in film and television, sort of like that artistic realm, you do need a lot of like solitude and alone time to kind of like gather your thoughts, write creatively, or come up with ideas and concepts. And I'll be honest, like, yeah, I mean, that has been a bigger, like, I didn't get married till I was 38.
Uh-huh.
And I had been in two long-term relationships. I had been engaged once that didn't work out. I had been in another relationship for 3.5 years, and regrettably, that one didn't work out. But I think at that time, I was like, how old was I? I was about 35, 36. And I had just decided in my mind that I was just going to be the old man in the club. Like,
Yeah, just you're gonna be single. This is how you're gonna roll.
yeah,
I had that same thought, like around
right.
the same age, 34, 35. I was like, oh, I'm just me now. This is how it's gonna be, because you kind of feel like life is set at that point.
Yeah. And I was just like, I can't, I said to myself, I don't know if I am built for this and the level of sacrifice it takes. Like I had decided at that point, like I jokingly told friends, I'm the Larry Brown of boyfriend. Remember, like the NBA coach, like Larry Brown would go to a franchise, the
He would
franchise would
never stay.
but he would fix it. Like you
Yeah.
would all of a sudden be like Eastern Conference or Western Conference perennial like contenders. Like you get to the Western Conference. And I went through a phase, honestly, like you dated me and we had an amazing 3 to 6 months. But then after you dated me, you found the one and you got married. And it happened like 2 or 3 times. And I was fine with that. I was like really okay with that because, you know, I had all these, I was just going to be, like I said, I was going to be like, I just didn't think like I could do it.
Yeah.
That was like that movie, Good Luck Chuck.
Sorry, what was that?
There was a movie called Good Luck Chuck where, yeah, I'm sure you guys film guys, you know.
Okay, I heard of it, but I never saw that. That's what happened in it?
Cook, I think, yeah.
Dane Cook, literally, he was the guy that all the girls dated before they got married. And like, it was known that like you date him and then you find your true love afterwards. So he would like go on a bunch of dates or, you know, date girls for like a week and then they find their, you know, their love of their life afterwards. So that's you.
That was 100%. And I was okay with that. Like I took, you know, I don't know, for some reason I took great solace in like these women. Like I was starting to date women, they were like a little they had been disappointed and they'd been hurt. I just kind of came in and like, you know, we had a great time. But again, like a lot of times I wasn't like, I was like, I don't know about this. Like, we'll just see, I'll write it out for the 6 months or the 2 years. I was just comfortable having experiences and stories to tell. And then, I met my wife and it was incredibly easy. And the weird thing is she was 31 at the time when I was 36 when we met. And she didn't think I was anything that was going to be serious either. Like she just was, I think she had gotten out of a long-term relationship and she was just like, let's just have fun. Like I was curious, you know, I was a curiosity to her and she was like, oh, you know, we'll try this. And we just ended up like literally after the first night, we went home together and have been together ever since. But I think when we got married, I think you guys can speak to this. I think both of us from our respective families and cultures were kind of the first people who had been expected to just, you keep going on and figuring out life, like go to university, go to graduate school, travel.
Like,
so you do this.
Your generation, right? Like you and your brother, like, or just you specifically,
Yeah, because for me, you know, I'm from the United Kingdom. My parents are originally from Ghana and they immigrated there. And their thing was just work. Like my dad trained as an accountant. My mom was a midwife. They just worked, bought property. Like that was their thing. But for me, I was the first time where I was like, no, I remember, you know, my dad really wanted me to be, you know, sort of like typical immigrant dad wanted me to be a lawyer, an accountant, doctor, you know, things they could gravitate to. And then your 5-year-old's like, oh, I want to be a film director. And I think like it was a struggle. And he's the one who introduced me to films, if we're being honest. And it was a struggle for him because it wasn't something they could relate to. But I think that what they realized was living in this different country, in this different culture, and them honestly like performing this miracle and solidly planting themselves in the middle class and seeing what was going around. It's like, oh, I have to let my children figure out what they want to do because they don't want a job, they want a career. And I think when you're kind of given that freedom and you're promoted to always critically think, you can overthink things. And I never was like, oh, you know, I'm going to marry my childhood sweetheart or I'm going to settle down. Like I left the country I lived in, moved here and basically started again. And I had a lot of great experiences. Like I met a lot of wonderful people. I had a great time. And I think my wife was the same. She had been in some relationships. She'd done undergraduate, worked, traveled the world, came back, did like a professional degree, a graduate degree, was working in the fashion industry. And we were just kind of like, I don't know, when we met each other, I feel like in your 30s, a lot of people make a mistake of deciding to cohabitate. Like they almost feel like they're the last people on the dance floor in some degree. And they look and they see someone and they look at their job portfolio, how much they make, their level of education, and they decide to pair. And I saw that, and I saw a lot of people get divorced like after 2-3 years because there hadn't been real passion there. For me and my wife, there was a lot of passion there, and we fell in love. And then, you know, when we got married, which is like 2 or 3 years after we met, we made a conscious decision that we weren't going to have children at that point, even though
Right. That's
we were, in our
famous
30s.
last words, as you say, because
Right. No, but we were going to do it later on, Aaron. It's just we'd made a decision that our child was going to be a business that we started at that point, which was my wife decided to start a nail business, a nail salon.
right.
It was sort of a high-end nail salon in mid-city in Los Angeles.
It was
And
beautiful. We used
thank you.
to go, my my fiance used to go there. We loved it.
And it was, it was a great place, and it was a kind of place where a lot of people in our circles or our tribe, for whatever you want, like that cross intersectionality could meet, and it was great. But that was our child. That was 24/7 for 5 years. Like my wife was not working other than on the project, like building it from scratch, finding location, doing the renovation, designing it, hiring staff. So that takes a lot of time. And I made a conscious choice to say, look, I don't think we should be adding the stress of trying to get pregnant during that period. Let's get it up and running, and then we'll do it. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I don't think people, until you get in it, I don't think people really understand that pregnancy is a journey. I think people think it's something that just inevitably happens.
It just kind of happens, yeah. We talked about that a little last episode, about the planning that can go into it, and and we've talked about it here and there about what pregnancy is like, and how world altering it is. But we're getting into this episode specifically. We're going to use this as probably its own episode, because you have some really great stuff in there. We want to be able to pull that specifically.
Okay, well, that's awesome.
This episode, we're going to talk. We have a guest here, Edward Gyimah, friend of mine from we went to grad school together, and he's about to have a kid at 40 plus.
I am. I'm 46 years old. I'm about to have my first child, a son. He's going to get here in about a month.
Congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're
going to give some tips and pointers, and with a focus on crying. I really want to talk about crying. We haven't talked about that specifically, and that is the number one thing that you're going to have to deal with. I'm Aaron Covington.
And I'm Tony Ragg.
And we are
40 Black and Dad.
I'm glad to be in the club. I wondered if it was going to happen, but I'm glad to be here.
Oh yeah, welcome. It's
Thank you for having me.
Very fulfilling club, but it is also stressful and tiring. So
that's all anybody warns me about, is the lack of sleep.
Oh yeah, I mean it's, and we'll get into this later on, but I mean it's
we're getting into it right now.
Let's get into it. I mean the lack of sleep is kind of it's true, but it's also a fallacy depending on many factors. But I mean it's how you and your partner kind of plan and work together on it. Yes, you're gonna not have the sleep you would have, if you're a single 25-year-old bratcher, but it's something that
it's like it's like the lack of casual sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
your sleep becomes very specific and pointed.
It's much more focused sleep.
Much more focused sleep. It's like I'm personally a night owl. Yeah, it's hard. It was hard for me to get to sleep early, but now the baby goes to bed at like anywhere from 7:30 to 9 or 9:30. That she's going to be down for the night, and it takes a while to even get to the point where they're going to be down for a whole night or for like 5-6+ hours at a time at night. That baby goes to bed at 8 o'clock. I'm in bed by 8:30, 8:45.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm asleep by 9. Like I'll just sit there, and it's like whatever tricks that they developed in like the military for people to fall asleep really fast. Like I figured those out. I hold still, and my mind goes blank. Like I have to sleep then, because there's no naps. I can't nap. Those are gone. So you got to prepare for that.
Yeah, I mean, my wife's kind of already in that stage. Like she's not able to sleep now. We're in, the third. So she's like building pillow forts and sleeping upright. And like we're having to break the sleep up during the day. It's like, babe, you can't do 12 hours straight awake and then think you're going to get your 6 hours, at night. So she's trying to break it up.
And it does change too. So Aaron's daughter is what, 3 months, right? About 3 months.
4 months and 1 week.
Okay, and then my son will be 3 years old in June, so
Mhm.
a little bit of a gap in there. So the first few months, it's gonna be chaos, and that's literally the only word. It's gonna be chaos. You're gonna be trying to figure out a routine. You're gonna be trying to figure out where you fit in, how your wife's feeling, how the baby's doing, what each cry means. But then as you get more and more comfortable with each cry and the routine and when the feeding, when they poop, when they need to sleep, it settles itself down. And I mean, like I said, my son now is 2.5, he's almost 3, and we put him to bed about 7:30, 8. Now he has a bed we can get out of, so that's a whole new thing. But like, he'll go down to sleep. He'll sleep for 12 hours, and we can we spend our time together, or we catch up on sleep, whatever it is. So there's a transition and kind of a way to go about doing it as the kids get older, and it gets better, as I always say. It always gets better, but it's definitely a good journey.
When do you feel like as a couple you guys hit your stride?
It's a good question. Go ahead, Aaron. You want to answer?
No, we have not hit our stride. I'm
I was
waiting for
gonna
this
ask.
answer.
No, you're still in your infancy. I'm asking.
Yeah,
Tony.
Yeah, we asking
So
Tony.
to be honest with you, probably right on 4 months. So it took us 3 good months to really just understand, because so the first month there's no way of having any sense of normalcy, because every day is new. Like, there's so much development going on. There's so much that you're doing the first month that's going to be different than the rest of the 30, 40, 50, 100 years that you have a child, that you can't account for. So it took us about 4 months to actually hit a stride, which is from month 2 to month 4, where we can actually start to get a routine of bottle feeding, get a routine of pumping, get a routine of sleeping, get a routine of, okay, like in the middle of the night, I'm gonna get up on these days to sanitize the bottles, or I'm gonna get up these days to do the feeding. So it takes probably about 4 months to really understand exactly what each cry means and how to preempt those. And that's the biggest thing as a parent. As a new parent, you want to be able to preempt a lot of the need for the child crying. So having a schedule for feeding, having a schedule for changing, having a schedule for sleeping are going to be very important in the beginning to help you alleviate and kind of offset some of those cries that you can get.
For sure. And the schedule, as somebody who's in the 4th month, and it does still constantly change, because that first month, and even when you're in a hospital, and we talked about that, we may do another specific hospital pod, but once you get out of the hospital in your home, it's literally every 1, 2, or 3 hours that you have to wake the baby up and feed it, then change the diaper, and then basically the baby will be up for another half hour, 45 minutes. They can only stay up for so long. Then they go back down. Then 2 hours later, you have to wake them back up, or an hour and a half later, they're waking up. So that's the first cycle. Then one day they sleep for 4 hours, and you let them sleep. You're like, we're just gonna let her. I feel like she hasn't been sleeping. We're gonna let her sleep, and then you start to enter a cycle where they have the ability to sleep a little longer. And that's about like maybe the 2nd month, or maybe 6 weeks to the 2nd month. Then it grows from there. But the whole time, and you're gonna look it up online the whole time. Oh, is your baby sleeping? Watch out for the sleep regression. Next week is a sleep regression. Every week online is a sleep regression on some website. The 7-week sleep regression, the 8-week sleep regression.
What is the sleep regression?
That's when you think you have a routine and the baby is sleeping and you're caught up on it. Then they start sleeping less, or the naps get shorter. So it's like the sleep has regressed because there's another development stage.
Yeah, that's very true. In the beginning, they say babies, in the first month or 2 are sleeping, and probably even longer than that, at least 18 hours a day. You'd wish it was all in the same block, but it's going to be 30 minutes, an hour, 15 minutes, 45 minutes. Like, it's all kind of broken up. So that's what, kind of, we're talking about the sleep regression. Like, you'll have where, your son or daughter sleeps for 2 hours normally, and then they sleep for an hour for like a week. And then next week, they're sleeping for 3 hours. So there's kind of a guessing game, and you kind of just have to wait and see. But like I said, having that routine of feeding and like changing and preempting a lot of the needs will help you be able to understand if it's a sleep regression or if it's just kind of a one-off thing. Because if you're doing the same thing every day, then the baby's gonna, like, kids love structure. Like, from day one, from birth, structure is one of the biggest things that you can do to help normalize the situation of pregnancy, because it's a lot.
And how have you guys found having, I don't know if you know, if you have, but your family or support unit around to help? Have you found the more people you've had around is more helpful, or is it best to kind of just keep it to just you and your partner?
Oh, Aaron, I want to hear you say this first.
I feel like one person at a time is really as much as I can handle. And then really in that first month or first even like 6 to 8 weeks, it's hard to see where another person's going to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, people want to come and visit, and sometimes somebody just holding the baby or bringing food, of course.
Yeah.
And small things like that can be really helpful, especially, I think food can be especially helpful, especially if you don't want to like order something all the time, because you're not really, even if you love to cook, it can just start to be overwhelming that, oh, I got to cook today too, like from scratch. I don't know about that one, you know.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say just literally even people bringing you food or someone to just allow you to take a shower if your partner is sleeping and doing something like that can really help. So, I mean, we've kind of preempted that. And again, as I mentioned, like my family is from Ghana and we come from a sort of like very village culture. Like it takes a village. So, you know, my mother is coming out here for the first 2 months. She's just going to be living with us. And then my mother-in-law is, you know, they live about 3 hours away, but they're gonna be getting Airbnbs because they want to be here, you know. And I'm sure you guys can relate. Like we've unfortunately made them all wait, and this is the first grandchild for either family, so they're very excited about it, and they're going to be involved. But yeah, I have heard that just rudimentary things that you took for granted, like you just can't appreciate having this human being who is dependent on you for everything at every minute doesn't just allow you to even do the simplest things like you say, or cook, or even like wash dishes.
Well, you get so grateful for somebody to come over and help, but at the same time, you are still the parent, and you're like, don't hold them like that. Don't talk to them like that. Don't do that. You know, you're still like, did you wash your hands? Do you have all your shots? You still get like
that goes away
protective.
as you get old. As you get old, as the child gets older, that goes away. But yes, just please, anybody hold them. But
For sure.
so I'll give kind of my answer to that. So mine's a little bit different. That's why I let Aaron go first, because so we had our baby during COVID. So our son was born June of 2021. So all of COVID, like it was, you know, the tail end of COVID. So we were very strategic about like only having one person come at a time, which was helpful. So my mother-in-law, she's actually a retired nurse, 40 years in. So she was first, like you're the first one gonna be here. She was here, you know, during the delivery. She wasn't able to be in the room because of COVID, but we had her, and then after she left, and you know, my parents came, and so it helped out. But like Aaron said, like in the beginning, you're gonna be very like leery of anybody touching the baby, and you know, you think that it's like everybody's gonna break the baby. One thing
Also,
one thing
you,
you'll learn is that's not the case, and your parents also did have kids as well.
They did. They did.
well,
My mom loves to remind me of that. Like, I had you and you turned out okay. You're right. Go ahead, hold the baby as long. I'm gonna take
you
this nap.
also get over concerned about bonding, because then like the baby's, we're gonna get into this crying thing, with the baby's like screaming its head off to you, you know, sometimes because it's just hungry or uncomfortable or has gas. And then you give it to somebody else and it's like, ah, this is great. And you're like, wait, do you like this person you just met? We were with you in a hospital. We held you to sleep for 3 days. And it's like, so then you start to feel whatever parent feeling that. There should be a word for that, you know, because it's not, you have plenty of time to bond with your baby, but you just can't help that. Especially moms.
Disassociation or something like that.
Yeah. Especially moms would be like, maybe she doesn't love me. They don't love. It's like, no, you know they do, but in that moment it can feel kind of demoralizing or something.
So they always say kids act better um in outside of with their parents. So like if you give them to like a, you know, family member, whatever, the kid is gonna do things that they would not do with their parent. And we can talk about this later on. It's not necessarily for this pod, but there's a psychological reason for that. And it's kind of like they know that the parent love is always going to be there.
Right.
So they can be as bad as they want. Like they can be as bad as they want to with you, because they know you're going to still love them and feed them. But these other people, they don't know, so they're trying to be good for these new people. So
they're trying to earn their love, their affection.
Well, it was funny yesterday. So the mom is working, finishing work. I have the baby. We had a nanny who left. Her shift was over, so I have the baby, and she starts to fuss. I went outside to the front yard, and they're building a house across the street or fixing a house, and there's always people walking. As soon as we step outside, golden child.
Exactly.
For the next hour and a half, she is perfect. Just looking around at the trees, I'm like, just as soon as we get out of the house, you know to act better. As soon as we come back in, where's the food? I'm like, yo.
Don't act a fool in front of other people.
You know,
They learn
whatever
that from her.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'm definitely down with whatever works. I'm always about solutions. I don't necessarily needs to know what it is. If it makes itself apparent, I'll take it.
And
100%.
And one thing you'll find, and again, this is the dad podcast, so obviously we're coming from the dad's point of view, is, and I told this to Aaron last time, like, you're gonna find this out, like, you and your spouse are gonna have very different ideals of safety and different things. And I told Aaron last podcast, like, dad's role is to prepare the child for the world, and mom's role is to protect them from the world. So
Right.
there's going to be times where you're like, oh yeah, that's fine, especially if you have a boy, or the boys are going to be bouncing around. Like, girls are a little more calm, but my son, he jumps off the couch, he's rolling, like he's doing everything he can, and I just let him do it because, like, I mean, yeah, he might hurt himself, but he'll learn how to to do it the right way. My wife's like, put him in a bubble wrap and don't let him do anything. So
Oh yeah,
you're gonna find that, and again, that's mom's role, and like, you have to let her have that role. But in the end, you also have to kind of have that preparedness. Like, you have to make sure that he or she is prepared for different obstacles, and that there's gonna definitely be that balance that you're gonna have to definitely talk about, and communication to be very much key in those conversations for sure. So
yeah. I mean, that's
see.
already kind of identified itself a little, just like in the way we interviewed pediatricians. Like,
Sure.
I found the pediatricians, don't get me wrong. Like, I was doing the research, but it's like my wife would have 20 questions for them, and I didn't have any questions. I was just like, oh, we're gonna have a conversation. My wife was like, is there a different entrance for sick children as opposed to healthy children? Like,
Wow.
what is, do you wipe down the toys in your waiting room? Like, are you available on on the weekend? Like, it was a lot of, so I think you're absolutely right on that, Tony, in that, yeah, I do want to prepare my child for the world, but yeah, mother's definitely that, and I felt throughout this whole journey, I've been about a month behind her in terms of realizing things or reacting to things. Like, there'll be times where she's very upset and worried about something and I don't understand. And then like a month later, I'm on board and she's already moved past it. So yeah, that is definitely something in terms of our dynamic that we're still trying to figure out.
And it doesn't change, it just evolves. But, and like I said, it's a big communication thing. Like I said, it's both ways are very much valid. Like, you have to protect, you have to prepare, but there's always a time and place for each. And as long as there's a space for each person to feel heard, that's one thing that me and my wife, we've been working on, to the communication and talking. Because again, she's very much mama bear. Like, he can't go outside if there's one bit of sun outside, he's fully coated in sunblock. I'm like, man, it could be 100 degrees outside. Just stay in the water. We're gonna be in the shade all day. So I mean, obviously, there's a middle ground that has to be put in there, but
Sure.
yeah, something to keep an eye on for sure.